Hangout.
We're
We're
happy.
happy that you were able to join us. Sorry for some technical glitches as we sort this new system out. You may also hear some background noise. There is some construction going on in this building, so I apologize for that. But thank you for joining us for this Hangout. It's great to be here with you all. Just to inform you that this session is being taped, so if you want to listen to it at a later time, this will be available to you. We've summarized your questions that you've posted over the last couple of days, and we'll try to address as many of them as possible in the next hour. The questions that we don't get to in the next hour, we'll post the responses on discussion board. And also, as you have more questions, please feel free to post them on the discussion board, and we'll do our best to answer them promptly. As we talk, as we spend this hour together, if you have further questions, feel free to post them. Nicole and Corey are here with me, and they will be monitoring the questions that come, and we'll try and address those. So to get us started, I'd like to just address some of the comments that we've gotten on discussion boards about how this course has affected people's thinking about health and wellness, and how it has influenced how they think about healthy living. And we've also gotten questions about what people want to do professionally related to this field. So, so I'm glad to hear, I'm glad to read that a lot of you mentioned that this course really helped you at a personal level, or at a level in the context of your families, to help you develop a healthier course of a healthier lifestyle. In terms of profession, what some of the next steps might be professionally. Some of you asked the question if we offer an associate degree or a bachelor's degree in this field. So I'm happy to report that ASU offers a number of online programs related to health and wellness, and I'll read the list out to you. But I also would like to mention that the Global Freshman Academy that you're part of offers a series of courses that you can take, just as you did this one, that allow you to complete your full first year of undergraduate degree. And you can find more information about it at gfa.asu.edu. In terms of courses that ASU offers in the health-related area that are available online, these include health education and health promotion, an undergraduate degree in healthy lifestyle coaching. It's become a very popular degree for us. Food and nutrition management, and nutrition communications. We also offer a number of other online degrees that Corey has shared a link with you all. So please feel free to go to that link and check out what other degrees are offered by ASU. Also, there are some master's level courses that we offer exclusively online. And these include the course that is offered by our school, the School of Nutrition Health Promotion, is a MS in Nutrition. This course is, however, limited to people who already have a registered dietitian credential. But nonetheless, there is a lot to think about. If you are interested in this field, please check out these degrees that are offered online or in person at ASU. And if you have questions about specific degrees or specific fields of interest, feel free to ask a question, and we do our best to answer the questions. Another question that we often get in these edX courses is what lines of career or what lines of profession can one pursue if you are interested in a field like this. So some of the professions that you can pursue include healthy lifestyle coaching. You can get into nutrition and dietetics, become a registered dietitian, and work in a variety of settings, including hospitals, in public health settings, in schools, in worksite wellness types of programs. So the options are really unlimited. There are other programs that you may consider, including public health, and also other allied fields if you're interested in health and wellness. Another question that we've gotten from several of you is that if those who are enrolled in this course will be available, if the course will be available to you after next week when we complete the after the finals are over. And yes, those who registered in the course will stay available to you, so you can come back and visit with us again. You can watch the videos or access all the resources that the course covered. The course will be offered again next summer, so if you have colleagues or friends or family members who are interested in taking the course, you can direct them to this course. It will be offered in the summer, so please check back to see the dates for the course. And I think those were the questions related to the mechanics of the course. One more question in that area was issues related to language and language in which the course is offered and connectivity related issues. So right now this course is being offered in English, and that's how it's going to be. We don't have any plans for offering this in another language in the near future, but we really appreciate your interest in that. Several people raised issues related to connectivity. So unfortunately, given that it is an online course, there are minimum expectations of having uninterrupted connectivity in order to be able to access the course. There were also some issues related to, we've addressed these issues all through the course about the rigor of the course and having definite deadlines for quizzes and for tests. Because it's an online course that allows people to get undergraduate credit for it, it is more rigorous than what you often see in online courses. So while we've tried to be flexible, especially at the beginning when all of us were trying to, getting used to the new way of looking at clocks and new ways of taking a course, we've tried to be flexible in that context, but unfortunately we can't leave the finals or midterms open for a longer period of time, because this course has to have that rigor because it is part of an online undergraduate credit requirement. So with that, I'd like to jump into some of the content-related questions that we've had, some that were posted within the last couple of days, and others that we've seen appear through the 7 weeks that we've interacted with you. So I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about the social ecological model. We've used that model to frame this course to a certain extent, and part of the reason being that most of us who developed this course actually work in that area. So as I mentioned in one of the videos, my research is framed within the context of a social ecological model. So when I'm thinking about addressing a research question, I first think about the social ecological model and see how does it fit within that context, and how what research I'm doing will inform how we can change individual level outcomes, but within the context of different layers of influences that the social ecological model describes. So in a nutshell, what the social ecological model tells us is that individual level health is influenced, of course, by individual level characters, individual genetic makeup, individual level preferences, education levels, individual level demographics, gender, and such. But these influences take place, these personal features are embedded in the social context. So for example, how a child, um, the child's food preferences are definitely associated with what his parents eat, what his peers eat, and so on. Similarly, what the child eats is influenced by what's happening in his or her school situation, what kinds of foods are offered in schools, what kinds of food environment is there, and also what kinds of uh, uh, educational programs are available within the school setting. Another layer of the social ecological model that I study personally quite extensively is the community layer, which tells us, what kinds of access does a child have. So whether if it is in terms of food, what kinds of food outlets are available in a child's community or around a child's school. If you're thinking about physical activity, what kinds of physical activity opportunities are available around a child so that he can partake in physical activity. And these might include not only availability of parks and recreation centers or running fields or soccer fields, but also what is the level of crime in that neighborhood, or what is the perception of safety, whether it is related to traffic or crime. So all these things impact individual level behavior. So yes, an individual decides what they're going to eat or not, or an individual decides whether they're going to be physically active or not, but that decision really hinges on a lot of other factors that surround that individual. So family level, school level factors, or organization level factors, community level factors, and then ultimately our society, which includes also includes larger, wider policies that impact us, whether through our city, state, nation, or internationally. This layers also includes issues related to related to marketing or media influences. So one of the areas that I work in is related to food marketing. So somebody brought up this issue about how is marketing targeted to certain racial groups or certain ethnicities. And the evidence shows that media can influence individuals' behaviors, right? That's why we see all these advertising, billions of dollars spent in advertising, because it influences our consumption and purchase patterns. What I study is marketing, food marketing specifically to children. And what my research has shown is that we see evidence of marketing, higher rates of marketing to in lower income neighborhoods, in rural neighborhoods, and in communities of color. In fact, one of the papers that I published, I think last year or year before, we looked at food marketing to children in fast food outlets, and what we found was that fast food chain restaurants, or fast food restaurants in general, but more specifically chain restaurants that were located in African American communities were almost twice as likely to use child-directed marketing to promote fast food consumption. And while we know that there may be some healthy options available at fast food, but vast majority of options available at fast food restaurants still continue to be unhealthy options. So there is a lot of influence going on through these different social ecological layers that impact individual level behavior. And what we find is that how these different layers impact an individual can vary depending on individual level characteristics, which may include age of the individual, race of the individual, income of the individual. So their exposure to different different types of different layers of the social ecological exposure to different aspects of the social ecological model can vary based on these circumstances. I gave you an example of food marketing, but another example is related to food access. What kinds of foods are available in different kinds of communities. So within the US, there is evidence that lower income neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color tend to have fewer, healthier options for purchasing foods than white and wealthier neighborhoods. So these types of differences at various levels of the social ecological model result in what we call health disparities, and we try to address that quite a bit in our previous weeks. And if you have further questions on that, please feel free to write to us. So I'm looking at some other questions that we got. Another question that we got, an interesting question that we didn't address in a lot of detail in this introductory course, was related to epigenetics. Epigenetics is a newer field. What it tells us, what it means is that several people raised this issue of people are the way they are because of their genetic makeup, right? So if someone's overweight or obese, it could be because genetically they are more prone to it, or if they have another chronic condition, it could be that they're genetically more prone to it. That's absolutely true, and a lot of variability in our health outcomes is actually determined by our genetic makeup. But unfortunately, that's something that we can't change, right? We chose our parents or didn't choose our parents, but that's what we're born with. However, we can change the environment in which we live in. And epigenetics studies how environments affect our genes. So certain environmental factors can enhance certain types of genes to express themselves, or in other words, kind of turn them on or off. So there are some environmental pollutants, for example, that can turn certain, that have been shown to turn certain genes on in animal models, whereby if the animal is not exposed to those environmental pollutants, they having the same, in spite of having the same genetic makeup, they're becoming overweight or obese can differ based on whether they were exposed to that environmental pollutant or not. So while we cannot change our genetic makeup, we can change the environment and make it healthier so that we can have some control over what types of genes are expressed or not. So not only do environmental factors affect which types of genes are turned on, but they can also affect which types of unhealthy genes that may result in unhealthy outcomes can be kept turned off. So some of the nutrients play an important role in it. Two come to mind. B12 and folate have been shown to provide a methyl group to keep the DNA from turning on genes that may result in unhealthy outcomes. Some other questions that we got are related more specifically to our chronic disease lessons. And there was a really interesting question which said, when we talked about hypertension, we talked about systolic versus diastolic blood pressure, and we gave you cutoff points for when someone's considered in a pre-hypertensive state or in a hypertensive state or having a high blood pressure. So somebody asked what happens if only one of the numbers is raised. So that means either the diastolic or systolic is raised. So so these cutoffs actually work independently. So you can have you can be hypertensive if only one of your numbers is elevated and not both of them are elevated. One example is when your higher number or your systolic blood pressure is elevated. That's called isolated systolic hypertension, and that usually happens in people over the age of 50. And what we find is that systolic blood pressure tends to increase as we age. So by the time we get to 50, our systolic blood pressure is higher than what one would expect in a 20-year-old, and such. So something like just having the isolated systolic hypertension is associated with higher risk for heart disease, for kidney disease, and with stroke. So so one doesn't have to have both numbers raised in order to be diagnosed as a hypertensive. Another question related to this was how long does it take for hypertension to respond to lifestyle changes? So, well, it depends. It depends varies from individual to individual. It depends how extensive are the lifestyle changes that you're doing. In research studies, the shortest that one sees are usually about 6 to 8 weeks. More tend to be 12 weeks or longer, where they are able to see significant differences. And these studies that I'm referring to were mostly done with the DASH diet, the dietary approaches to stop hypertension diet. So people showed significant declines in hypertension after 8 to 12 weeks of being on these lifestyle changing behaviors. Some other questions were related to plaque buildup, because we talked about plaque buildup in terms of coronary artery disease. And what we discussed was that plaque progressively builds in our arteries and hardens the arteries and then restricts the flow of blood through those arteries. Some people, you may know, take lower doses of aspirin, for example, to prevent blood clots. Others take other types of blood thinners to prevent blood clots from causing blockages in these arteries that have narrowing because of the plaque. So the most common way of addressing these blockages is through angioplasty or angiography, where or stenting, where a device is passed through the artery and it tries to unblock the blockage formed because of plaque. Unfortunately, once the plaque starts to build up, you cannot get rid of it easily. There are just very few studies that have shown that if your blood cholesterol level goes down really significantly, I think by about 50% or something, a very drastic number, and I would say a very unrealistic number in many cases. Only in those instances you see some shrinkage of plaque, but otherwise, once the plaque has built up, there isn't very much you can do about it. Therefore, prevention becomes really important, and prevention becomes really important starting at a very early age, because I think in one of the videos I talked about it, that plaque buildup, there have been evidence buildup can start as early as 4 years of age. So in addition to angioplasty and angiography, some of the other things that are done is bypass surgery, where you they graft some they can graft arteries from another part of the body, or create bypasses to bypass blocked arteries. Another question that we had was related to type 2 diabetes versus type 1 diabetes. Specifically, why is type 1 diabetes prevalence higher among children and not among adults? So let me just describe the two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2, a little bit, and then try and explain this. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition in which the body attacks its own tissue, and in this case attacks the pancreas, and the pancreas can no longer make any insulin. So this happens fairly early in life. So people are diagnosed during early childhood to early teens with this condition, with type 1 diabetes. And I think I also mentioned that about 5% of all diabetic cases are type 1 diabetes. So among children, in about 20-30 years ago, that was the only type of diabetes we saw, because type 2 diabetes is a progressive disorder. It's a chronic disease that happens as we age because of a number of factors that we discussed, and I'll briefly summarize. So as I said, about 20-30 years ago, only type 1 was the only type of diabetes we saw in children, because in this situation, children's body who had type 1 diabetes just didn't make the insulin. However, what has started happening is, as rates of overweight and obesity have started going up, we are noticing that young children, 10, 12-year-olds, are also developing a form of diabetes that is not type 1. So their bodies can still make insulin. It's just that they're not able to make enough insulin, or their body is becoming resistant to insulin. In fact, there was an article just recently in the Journal of American Medical Association, which showed that for every 1% increase in a child's level of body fat, or excess body fat in the child, the insulin resistance in the child went up by about 2.3%. So increasing rates of overweight and obesity really contribute to increasing prevalence of type 2 diabetes in children. However, it's still small, because it takes a while for our body to develop diabetes. So most diabetes occurs in adults. Type 2 diabetes occurs in adults. In fact, it used to be called adult onset diabetes. So therefore, you see type 1 diabetes predominantly in children. They can now, with the advancement of medical interventions, they can go on living for extended periods of time. You know, life expectancy has tremendously improved among type 1 diabetics. So you still see some type 1 diabetics in adults, but it is a much smaller number. Most adults have type 2 diabetes. So I hope that clarifies this confusion a little bit. I'm just going to check, before I go on further, I'm going to check with Nicole and Corey to see if there are any other questions, or if they'd like to add anything, or just say hello. You've met with them. So maybe I'm going to mute myself and go to Corey first. On. Yeah. Did you want to come? Hi. We're all sitting in the same room, so we can come and say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And if you have any questions, feel free to post on the discussion board or on the Google Hangout, and Nicole and I are keeping an eye on those pages.
And Nicole just gave me some other questions, and I'll have Nicole come and say hello while I look at these questions.
Hello. Nice to see you guys.
The diabetes, okay.
Did you try to? I'll say I've got some.
Yeah.
But it might be the same ones that Nicole.
So one of the questions relates to sugar consumption, and it says um, how much sugar can people eat? How much sugar can diabetics eat? And what are some of the guidelines? So for the first time in the U.S. dietary guidelines history, we have recommendations for consuming for sugar. The World Health Organization suggests that we eat no more than 5% of our calories as in the form of sugar. The dietary guidelines now say it's 10%, right, guys? It's 10%, yeah. Only 10% of our calories can come from sugar. So that means if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, let's say, about 200 calories can come from sugars. So if you recall, about 1 gram of carbohydrates, sugars are pure carbohydrate, give you about 4 calories. So that means we can consume for 25 grams of sugar per day, or 50 grams of sugar per day.
No, 100 divided by?
200 divided by. It's 200 calories.
Oh,
right? Yeah. It's about 50 grams of sugar, which translates into 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar. And just to provide context for it, 1 can of soda can have about 10 to 12 grams of sugar. So if you drink a can of sugar, then you've done with it. Sorry, was it?
A can of soda, not can of sugar.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, not a can of sugar. A can of soda. A 12-ounce can of soda has about 10 to 12 teaspoons of sugar. So if you drink a can of soda, then you're done for the day. With regard to diabetics, I'd suggest that you talk with your healthcare provider or meet with a dietitian so that they can make some recommendations for and help develop a diet plan for you so that you can follow those recommendations based on your particular situation. There was another question related to, are supplements good or bad? In our reading materials, we've provided some really interesting readings from the Food and Drug Administration on use of supplements. So it's a controversial topic. However, personally, I feel that if one wants to take a supplement, then it should be within the recommended dietary allowances. And I don't necessarily believe in taking mega doses of any nutrient, because I think we should get most of our nutrition from the food. But if one wants to take a supplement, then something like what we have in the US here, 1-a-day type of supplement may be appropriate. However, I would strongly recommend that you look at that reading that we provided, because it puts things in the context. And we also talk about, for certain segments of the population, dietary supplements may be necessary. So one such segment is groups that are on specific diets. So for example, people who are following a vegan diet may need a B12 supplement. They may also need a calcium supplement, depending on what kinds of foods they are eating. Another group that may need some supplement are elderly. It could be just because they are not able to eat enough quantities of food that to meet their meet the needs for their vitamins and minerals that their body may need. So in those instances, I would think that an individual definitely should consider supplements. For a healthy individual, it's best to get your dietary requirements from a healthy selection of different types of foods, not excluding food groups and things that we've talked about that constitute a healthy diet. Okay, so let's see. So some of the other questions, I'm going to go back to my list from previous days is so there was a question on requesting some resources on disordered eating, and if disordered eating actually has some negative health consequences. So disordered eating, just as a refresher, is defined as excessive dieting or unhealthy or using unhealthy forms of weight loss techniques, associating guilt with eating, or starving oneself, or also just obsession with healthy eating. So what research shows is that there is negative impact on person's emotional, social, and physical well-being. It can lead to fatigue, it can lead to malnutrition, micronutrient deficiency, it can also lead to poor concentration. But mostly it can lead to anxiety and depression, and then has more social implications if if one is just limiting to what kinds of foods that one eats, then it creates a difficult situation sometimes in a social setting. So there are two resources that I really liked when I was researching materials for this class. One was from an Australian organization. It's called Eating Disorders Victoria. And the website is, and I'm going to request Corey and Nicole if they could post these websites on our discussion board. The first one is www.eatingdisorders.org.au for Australia. The other excellent resource is from US-based National Eating Disorders Association, and their website is www.nationaleatingdisorders.org, National Eating Disorders, one word, .org. So check these out. You'll have these links available on the discussion board. Another question that I'd like to address before my computer runs out of battery, and I think I have another computer to get to, right? I'm getting low, but I still have. I forgot to bring my charger with me, so I apologize if I have to switch computers. Okay, didn't he leave his computer?
Yeah, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay, all right. So if it gets low, we'll switch over to another computer, but we'll carry on with the discussion. The next question that we had was related to specific types of diets, whether it's Atkins diet or zone diet, or there is a large selection of diets, and what do I think of them? So I think I already talked about it in one of the lectures, but what my takeaway from reading a lot about these diets is that many of them work. Many of them work. They help you lose weight. They bring your biomarkers, your blood sugar, your cholesterol down to lower levels. However, what happens is the biggest issue is compliance, right? People get tired of these diets. People get tired, whether it's your cabbage soup diet, which is extremely restrictive, to another form of diet which may allow a lot of different kinds of foods but may restrict some specific food groups. In those instances, what happens is people can stay on track for a while, but as soon as they start bringing in those things that they were excluding from their diet, we often see that the benefits of these highly restrictive diets start to disappear. You want to switch computers now? Yeah, let's switch computers now so I don't, I'm sorry about that. I thought I had more battery power than I have. So we're going to switch here. Patrick Pettyjohn, who's been instrumental in getting this course set up, is here to help us and will lend me his computer. Should I mute it here? Okay. I'll mute it here.
Yep, go ahead and just share the screen.
Okay. All right, another computer. I hope I know how to navigate it, but I don't have to. Okay. All right, so carrying on, talking about diets, what we, and what my take is. So as I mentioned, it's the many diets in the short run work. You lose weight, your blood profile becomes better, but after a while, after 6 months, it varies from people to people. Some people can stay on these diets for longer periods of time, but after they stop being on these diets because they get tired of them or just can't deal with eating in a very restrictive manner, the weight comes back on. And in many such instances, what happens is people get on a diet, lose weight, and then they want to eat. We all want to eat the way we were intended to eat, right? From all different food groups. And once they start doing that, their weight starts to shoot up. And then we get into this yo-yo dieting situation that you get on the diet, you lose weight, and then you stop following the diet, and then you start to gain weight again. And oftentimes in this yo-yo dieting scenario, you end up gaining more weight than you started off with. So if you started with, say, 220 pounds and you lost about 40 pounds and you came to 180 on a specific diet, and then once you stop being on that diet, you start to gain weight again, and this time you may get to more than 220 before you get back on the diet again. So this yo-yo dieting may result in your regaining more weight than you lost. So instead, what I think works better instead of these extreme diets is forms of eating, developing an eating plan or a lifestyle such as what we've been discussing, evidence-based lifestyles of eating, whether it's related to DASH diet, similar to DASH diet, the Mediterranean diet, the whole food diet, or, we talked about different common features in these, common features being healthy types of proteins, healthier lean meats, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grain products, low-fat dairy, limiting the amount of processed packaged foods in the diet. Those, if you can incorporate those kinds of changes in your lifestyle, those are easier to maintain, and you can continue eating those hopefully for the rest of your life. So that would be my recommendation. We had a few questions on what I'd describe as functional foods. So these were questions about specific types of foods and how they may benefit, how their consumption may benefit. So functional foods are generally a group, it's a definition. So all foods are functional because they provide some function in our body. They provide us energy, they provide us macronutrients, micronutrients, and such. But functional foods are, for this discussion, defined as foods that provide benefits beyond basic nutrition, so beyond basic macro and micronutrients. They may have some additional benefits. So for example, tomatoes have a compound called lycopene, and it's considered to be very good for eyes, for example. Fish oil contains omega-3 fatty acids that are heart healthy. So there are many such foods that are researched, some extensively, and others, there are 1 or 2 studies out which show that there are benefits, but there isn't really strong evidence built around whether they are beneficial or not, or whether they are harmful. So it becomes tricky to evaluate those. But generally, when I'm thinking about functional foods, I try to think about 3 things that facts that or 3 points that I'd like to have you pay attention to. So the first one is the strength of evidence. So as we've reiterated throughout this course, that what we are talking about in this course is all evidence-based. So, and we didn't get to different levels of evidence in this course, but I'll briefly describe it. So there are different kinds of evidence that are established. So oftentimes it is anecdotal evidence, right? So some of you mentioned that in our sleep discussion, for example, that there are some people who can do with very little sleep, and I've also heard some people say that people who are high achievers tend to sleep very little. these are anecdotal examples. So all of us humans have a lot of variation within ourselves. So when I talk about evidence-based recommendations or guidelines, they are kind of talking about, on an average, how does a particular lifestyle influence behavior. So there are always going to be people at the extreme. So there are going to be people who can, for example, in this sleep example, can do with 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and there are going to be people who need about 10 or 12 hours of sleep, and they may be same age, same gender, same type of activity, but that's the variation we expect among humans. So when recommendations are made, they are made for a vast majority of the population. So going back to my example of level, or the point that I wanted to bring about related to levels of evidence. So level of evidence starts by people noticing some things in a few a few individuals, for example, or there may be a few case studies about certain people behaving a certain way, or having certain health outcomes because they followed a certain dietary practice, or ate something. But then that evidence has to be made stronger. So the next level often is we look at epidemiological studies. So we study a group of people. Again, in this, let's go back to the sleep example, who sleep very little, or who sleep a lot, or who sleep the right amount, and see what are the health outcomes. So that tells us about associations between what are the health outcomes, or what health outcomes are associated with people who have different levels of sleep. So that only tells us associations. That doesn't allow us to say with confidence about causality. So then you do build several other layers of evidence, and the final evidence that one can build is through what is called the gold standard in research, is randomized control trials, where you randomize people to different conditions and see what are their health outcomes. Now it's easier said than done, because in many of these situations where we are talking about, we can't do randomized control trials. So you do the best kind of controlled studies, where you have a group where you intervene, and you have another group where you don't intervene, and then you see what happens to health outcomes. And that's when we start to build evidence. And further, because we are wanting to make recommendations about health outcomes, we just don't rely on one study. So if one study found, for example, somebody asked this question about casein type A and type B, and honestly, I didn't know about it, so I went back and read about it. And what I found was that there was some research done in New Zealand which showed that one type of casein, and I don't remember right now which one it was people who, or milk that had that casein, and if people drank that milk, they had better health outcomes. However, later studies were not able to replicate that, and then there was a consensus paper or a literature review that was written on it, which showed that there wasn't really enough evidence to speak to that. So the level of evidence is really critical in examining functional foods. The second thing to remember about functional foods is the closer those foods are to the natural form. So if you want to eat lycopene, my recommendation would be to eat it in a tomato rather than in a lycopene extract, because while we are investigating these food components extensively, we are not quite at a stage where we can say that lycopene by itself has the beneficial effects, or lycopene in the presence of what else the tomato contains, whether it's vitamin C or other nutrients, that it works in the best situation. And the other advantage of eating it in the form of natural food is that you're less likely to have negative consequences for it, because we've been eating tomatoes for centuries and we know most people can tolerate it. But we don't know at what dose will people react in different ways to these extracted compounds from foods. And the third and most important thing to remember about functional foods is no amount of functional foods are going to compensate for a bad diet. So eating healthy overall is really important, and if you want to include some functional foods in it, by all means, but but you have to research the food to see. So if it has any negative consequences or not. But if it is, somebody asked a question about curry leaves or curry patta as it's called in India, and it's traditionally eaten in it's part of several types of cuisine. So if you want to include that in your diet, by all means, it's been eaten for centuries, and we know people eat it on an everyday basis. So if you want to incorporate that into your diet, that's great. But using it as a cure for diabetes or using it as a cure for lowering your blood sugar level, that's when it becomes tricky, and that's where it's important to consult with your healthcare provider, just so that you can monitor if it is having any effects on your blood sugar levels. And if you're on medication, you may have to adjust your medication. So working with your healthcare provider, letting them know what you're doing, is the best strategy. I think I have one more question on this on my list. Corey and Jesse, Corey and Nicole, any other questions?
Someone did ask about where they could find health statistics for a particular country. So we just want to talk about the World Health Organization.
Yeah, so one of the questions is, what is a good place to find health statistics for different countries? And I always go to World Health Organization or UNICEF if it's related to children. So I would search out resources offered through the World Health Organization or through UNICEF. World Bank also has some health statistics available, but I think you'll find most of what you're looking for at the World Health Organization. For people who are in the US, one of the best sources to find health-related statistics is the Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC, and a lot of our course material we drew from these organizations as well. So I'm looking at the clock also. So one of the questions that I want to bring up that was addressed, but maybe not fully address it because it's a little bit beyond the scope of this course, was related to environmental pollutants and their role in chronic diseases. So pollutants can play a significant role in chronic diseases. So the simplest example would be asthma and air quality, for example. We know that when there is more pollution in the atmosphere, people can get asthma triggers. Also, people who live in environments which have high levels of environmental or airborne pollution tend to have higher levels of asthma. There is some recent work that is being done on looking at small particulate pollution and chronic disease outcomes. So, for example, there is some evidence that is showing that air pollution can lead to some increased risk for heart disease. In fact, I'm working with someone where we are looking to see if some small particulate pollution in the air may have some role to play in onset of or in etiology or in causation of childhood obesity. But in these instances, the mechanism of this association is not well studied, but there is a lot of interest and a lot of work being done in this area. If you have access to the internet, which I assume you do because you're taking this course, I would suggest that you look at some resources from the CDC and the World Health Organizations, the organizations that I recently mentioned in response to the previous question. So that was those were some of the questions that we received. I'm going to ask Nicole and Corey if they want to add something.
Does hypertension in the eyes? How does hypertension affect your eyes?
Yeah,
Let me get back to that.
Yeah, we can get back to you about that one. Yeah, so because it gets more technical, it's yeah. So I think we'll keep it. Maybe we'll link you with some resources because it may be a bit more advanced for this course. So I have a few questions that I'd like to ask of you. And if it was a regular class, I'd have you all sitting in front of me and I could ask these questions. But what I'd urge you to do is, Nicole has created a discussion board link, which is called What I Like About the Course and What I Don't, or something similar.
I call it course feedback.
Okay, it's called course feedback. So you'll also get a course evaluation, and I'd strongly recommend you filling that out, because that is very valuable to us. As you know, this is the first time we are offering this course, and we'd love to improve upon it for next time when we offer it, and that's in the summer. So please do take the course evaluation, complete the form that you'll get online. But I also am interested in getting your comments and feedback related to some of the questions that I'm going to pose. So each week, we very carefully put together a selection of resources for you, including videos, readings, case studies, interactives, a glossary, and a number of other things, including readings from a variety of sources. So what I want to know is, what generally over the course of the 7 weeks, what types of resources did you find most useful? And what types of resources did you not use very much, or didn't think that they were very useful? That will help us engineer this course next time, and then maybe tweak it so that it's more useful for a wider audience. Please post these under the discussion board thread that Nicole has just posted. Also, Nicole and Corey, I'm mixing up all the names here. Nicole and Corey each week summarize the discussion board entries for that week. They also summarized some questions that were coming each week, and also addressed some deadlines and issues like that. I'm curious to know that what you thought of that, how useful it was, and if you have any thoughts on how we can make it more useful, please do let us know. And if you have other thoughts on how we can stay connected with you, please do let us know. We'd love to stay connected. And finally, I'd reiterate what I said at the beginning. Please post questions. If your question didn't get answered here, please post it. We'll do our best to answer it. And this video, this Google Hangout is being broadcast, and it's being taped, so it will be available for you. And we look forward to hearing your comments and suggestions on how to make it better. And good luck on your final exam. Thanks very much.